Hello, I am Kevin Jones, FIDM Museum Curator. Welcome to our conversation with Trish Somerville, Academy Award nominated costume designer for Mank and graduate of FIDM, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising here in Los Angeles. We are thrilled to have you all join us, and I see that we have guests logged in from around the world. At the end of the evening, we will select a few questions from the audience. So be sure to drop your questions for Trish into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, not into the chat. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest. Costume designer Trish Summerville is best known for her work on films such as The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Gone Girl, and Red Sparrow. She is a frequent collaborator with directors David Fincher and Francis Lawrence. In television, Somerville designed the pilot for HBO's hit series Westworld, for which she was nominated for an Emmy. In addition, she has designed the first season for C on Apple TV+. In music, Trish Somerville is the designer responsible for costumes of iconic music videos such as Artists with Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, the Black Eyed Peas, and Pink. Somerville won Costume Designer of the Year at the 2013 Style Awards. She has also won 2 Costume Designer Guild Awards with an additional 4 nominations. Somerville designed capsule collections inspired by the films Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Hunger Games, Catching Fire for H&M and Net-a-Porter, both of which were huge commercial successes. Her work has been featured many times at the FIDM Museum in our annual Art of Motion Picture Costume Design and Art of Television Costume Design exhibitions. She is currently in production with the Netflix film Slumberland, starring Jason Momoa. And the reason we're here today, Trish Somerville's most recent work can be seen in David Fincher's film Mank on Netflix. Trish has been nominated for a Costume Designer Guild Award, Critics' Choice Award, the British Academy Film Award, known as the BAFTAs, and has received her first Academy Award nomination for her work on this film. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Trish Somerville.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Trish. How are you?
I'm really well. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Where are you coming from tonight?
Today, I'm actually in Los Angeles. I just got back home from Toronto.
Aha. So you've been traveling around the world. Well, we're so happy to have you here tonight and to talk about Mank. And let me give a little bit of a background. It is a biopic film on Herman Mankiewicz, who was actually a screenwriter in the golden age of Hollywood, and he was known as Mank, and he wrote that famous classic film Citizen Kane, which features the characters in your film such as screen siren Marion Davies and the legendary newspaper businessman William Randolph Hearst. So we want to hear all about that film, but also we'd like to know a little bit about you and your background. Your career has had such an interesting trajectory. Can you take us on a journey from the music videos to working to an Oscar-nominated film?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as everybody knows, I went to FIDM, and when I was in FIDM studying, I thought I would do fashion design, but particularly women's ready-to-wear. And through that, kind of started working in various levels of assisting on commercials and music videos, which then pushed me into doing more music videos. And then I assisted in film, and then kind of went back to doing music tours for a bit, and then started doing styling on my own, commercials on my own as a designer, and then doing film as a costume designer on my own. And that just kind of led me in a lot of different avenues to where I am today.
Do you have a particular favorite? I mean, do you like music videos, films, or are they kind of equal for you?
I think it just depends on exactly what it's going to be. I mean, I like film a lot because you get the entire script to start with, and there's a lot of character development there, which I really enjoy. And I like the collaborative aspect of working with the production designer, the director, the DP, hair and makeup. I like that whole thing of creating characters and helping create this world. Music videos, I actually really do also enjoy, because It's kind of a very quick, satisfying piece of art that you get to be a part of. And a lot of times it can be much more outlandish. I wouldn't say more creative, because I've been really lucky to work on a lot of really creative projects. So for me, a lot of it just depends on timing. And, I think it's probably like if I've been on a movie for a really long period of time, then doing a short commercial or a short video would seem appealing. But I do love the time spent in developing characters and helping create a world and helping tell a story. And I've not done a lot of television. I've done pilots, but with C, I did 4 episodes solidly creating that world, and then came back and did episodes 7 and 8. So I did spend a lot of time with that, with Frances, and I really enjoyed that a lot, because as you can see in some of these costumes, they're not everyday pieces. And, we had such a great time with C, because I went to, with my team, we'd go to scrap yards, and we'd go to the Sea Legacy yards where they pull stuff out of the ocean, and we repurposed so many things. And we pretty much built almost everything. We had some shoes that we did purchase, but as far as the costumes, we built everything. So that was really fulfilling and satisfying. And I had an amazing team of people that were up for anything. Like in this image, the Queen, Sylvia Hoeks, her crown is made out of metal chopsticks and parts of a bicycle, and so it's like, it was really great and really creative to be able to just come up. We could really do anything we wanted.
It's like conceptual art, seriously. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun.
Well, it's great having these images right here, because, you have such a strong background in fantasy and sci-fi productions, including these dystopian worlds like of Westworld and the Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and C. Do you have a different process for approaching a film like Mank?
I think each project is different. I mean, for me, it's like I'm really drawn to what the script is. And then you hope that you're lucky enough that you get to work with a great director, you get a great cast, and then you really hope that there's something creative costume-wise for you to do. But I have to say, I'm really drawn first to story. And with that, it is, within the story, I do try and figure out what are the things that propel the characters, what are the things that, will speak loudly to me. And then I just start doing a lot of research. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it all starts with research. It's just different types of research. Like the film I'm on now is contemporary, but it's a bit of whimsical fantasy. So, that research is a bit different than what I did for Mank, where that was all, 30s and 40s, black and white research, and being very accurate to what people wore of the time. I think with period films, you have to have that authenticity and that realism, whereas with some of the other films I've done, I've got to create any imaginary world. So, that's much different in the process.
That must be so creatively inspiring, because you can jump around different worlds. It's never the same ever. You can go back in time, you can go into the future, you can create whatever, world. And working with directors and producers, it's really their vision that you're helping to bring to life. Do you like working with a director that kind of gives you all the freedom in the world, or do you like to have your really specific direction? Working with David Fincher, obviously you have a good sign language, I'm sure, body language that's developed, because you know what he likes, he knows what your visions. How much direction do you like, or do you want to be completely creative? And is that possible?
I think it goes, kind of goes both ways. Again, I think it depends on, who you're working with. I mean, David gives you an enormous amount of creative freedom. We do have quite a bit of a shorthand because we've done a few films together. So I think it's, he kind of gives you this script. He sits down with you, goes over the story. He's always extremely available to any questions that you have, wants to see things as you're going along. I mean, a big dialogue that we had with Mank was how to figure out what we're going to do in black and white, how we're going to shoot this, and what it's going to look like. So I early on started shooting stuff in my phone in the 3 different black and white settings and sent that to him, just different costumes that already existed from rental houses down to just, pieces of fabric, buttons, everything. So we could kind of narrow down which filter in the film was closest to the way he thought he and Eric would shoot the film. So there was loads and loads of dialogue about that. Lots of, we had extensive camera tests so that we could really see what kind of lighting they were going to use, what lenses that they would use, and how this all would translate onto film, because we shot in black and white. We didn't shoot in color and then transfer the film. So when you're watching it all on the monitor, it's while you're working, it is all in black and white. But if you see it to the naked eye, obviously it's all clothing and color. So then I also really wanted to be very conscious of containing the color palettes on set. So it didn't, to the naked eye of everyone working, especially David and the actors, it didn't become jarring. But with David, he gives you so much freedom, and it's such a pleasure, because he is so precise on so many things, but it's more in the filmmaking and the technicality and all the way things are being shot. But as far as for production design and costume design, you do have a lot of freedom.
Mank was not your first black and white project. That actually goes back to your music video days with Suit and Tie, Justin Timberlake, Jay-Z. Was the process then similar with the phone, or did you develop that for Mank? Because it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea, something so easy to be able to immediately access what those costumes are going to look like.
No, I'd have to say, because of timing and what's available on your phone and how that constantly keeps changing, I only had used it on Mank. That was what was such a great tool for us, because, for Mank, we built probably 90% of all the principals' costumes, and we also had to build filler for the background costumes because we just couldn't find enough stuff. We couldn't find enough pieces of clothing because we had such big background scenes. So even just every fabric, that we would photograph every fabric, all the shirtings, men's ties. And, at times it is kind of interesting of how things pop up and come up differently. Like prints were really, really bold and really, really dramatic. Like the image that's up right now, these are illustrations that we did. My illustrator was Gloria Kim, who's extremely talented.
Beautiful.
Yeah, just beautiful work. And we wanted it to be this very kind of noir, monochromatic feel to it. So her and I went through a lot of old fashion magazines and catalogs like Sears and Roebuck and JCPenney catalogs to look at the type of illustrations that were done in these magazines, to get the tone right, to get the lightness right of the fabrics. And yeah, she just did a really, really beautiful job.
I mean, color usually informs so much about a character's development. Was it a challenge to tell a story without that tool?
Well, for me, I think in my mind, it is color. It's just shades and tones. So, with one of the things with, like, say, for instance, like Marion's character, I knew for her character particularly, I wanted to keep her light and I wanted her to be the center of attention always. So she has very delicate fabrics. We use some faux furs on a collar of one of her coats, but keeping her always in these light tones or these metallic tones. And then someone like, Gary Oldman's character, Mank, I wanted him to be very kind of these shades of grays and blues. So we kind of kept him very refined in that way as well, so that there was this contrast whenever she's with him, that she's light and he's dark. So that you kind of see this, because she has this very light, bubbly energy, and he's kind of, this really interesting, intense, witty, smart alcoholic who's, kind of just, living his life on his sleeve. So I wanted that to show in, like, the wear in his clothing, the softness in his clothing of being, just lived in, and just keeping his color palette really contained.
Well, and we are looking at a juxtaposition of people and their realities in the 1930s. I mean, it was the height of the Depression. And so to look at Gary Oldman as Mank or Lily Collins as Rita Alexander and the other characters that really you see in the Depression, it is a great contrast to that glamorous closed-in world that, of Hollywood and Hearst Castle.
Yes, I mean, that's one of the things I really did enjoy about working on this, was we got to show various economical status of people and everyday life. I mean, it's a film about Hollywood, but it's not a glamorized, over the top film. Like in this image, you see this is this is, Mank coming out. This is the DP that he works with, and they're leaving a hotel bar. So he's a bit disheveled. He's unbuttoned. He has a very casual sense about him, even though, he's properly dressed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and since there are quite a lot of men in the film, and, if you're looking at clothing, real clothing from the 30s and 40s, it wasn't expansive in fashion the way that we have it now, that like you can wear so many things. There was particular guidelines that you followed, what was proper, what was considered improper. So with men, it is, if you're at work, it's suitings, depending on if you're working in an office. I also love showing this. And then we had, showing the life on the back lot. Like these guys are all writers, DPs, producers in suits and ties and pulled together. But I love the big backlot scenes that we have, like one of the opening scenes of you see the showgirls and we dress strong men, and then you see the grips and the electrics all walking through. So it's kind of just to show what that real life behind the scenes is of what it takes to make a film in Hollywood life.
And what a great way also costume-wise to then be able to look at the different worlds. I mean, not only the Depression world reality, the fantasy world with on a set, but then also that kind of high glamour world of Hearst Castle, such as the really crazy, wonderful circus party scene that was an actual occurrence on the Hearst Castle estate. How did you outfit the characters to complement, contrast one another when you have so much going on, including all the incredible background and the table settings and everything else?
So this is when you work very closely with the production designer, and the production designer is the person who helps Dave create this world of all the sets, all the locations. And so I work closely with Don Burt to discuss with him, what will the interiors look like? How dark or how light will they be? And that's also when you work with the DP. How is he going to light it? Do I need to go lighter with the clothing, darker with the clothing? And so for the circus party, we found, luckily, a lot of our characters were real people. Mm-hmm. So Hearst would throw these circus parties once a year, or not circus parties, sorry. He would throw these parties once a year at his castle. And luckily, the one in the script date that we had turned out to be the circus party. So we had a lot of images of Marion in a costume extremely similar to this, Hearst in a costume very similar to what he's wearing. And then I just went through and picked out various party guests that we really liked what they were wearing, and kind of found background that looked like them. Like there's a gentleman that looks like Clark Gable, so we dressed someone like that. We had someone who looked like Betty Davis, so we dressed someone like her. So with these costumes, with the Hearst costume here particularly, it's really similar to his, except in his photos, he had this enormous polka dot tie. And because of the seriousness of this scene, I didn't want it to come across as comical. So I chose to change his tie. But he was in a lame suit, and he was dressed very close to this. And again, with this scene, I wanted Marion to be the lightest person in the room. So she has this, she's dressed kind of as a ringleader, a majorette ringleader. So we made this, this hat with a big plume of feathers on the front, so that when Mank first walks in, she's the first thing that he sees. His eyes kind of go directly towards her. So, we just had a lot of fun with this scene. We dressed up, I think we had 22 or 24 people at this table. And then the house servants that are there that serve dinner and everything else.
There must have been a tremendous amount of research and a lot of fun to see all of these period sources to pull from. Where did you do your research? Did you go to Hearst Castle? Did you go to the Academy Museum?
For this film particularly, yes, there's a lot of research at the Academy Museum. There's also, we have sources like Western Costume that has a really great research library. You can find a lot of things online now. And again, what helped us was that a lot of these characters really did exist. Like with L.B. Mayer, there was tons of things from Mayer on set, at work, with his family life. Same for Marion. I watched a lot of 30s and 40s films to see exactly what the silhouettes were that people were wearing, how things moved on a body. So we were able to find a lot of research, and also to going back to just pulling fashion magazines of the times, and then just daily magazines like and catalogs, like things like, you know, JCPenney or Sears catalog was start to finish everything you needed in your house. It sold fabric, it sold appliances, it sold wedding rings. So it was a great source for us to look at, you know, daily life of what people were doing in that time period.
You know, in the films of the 1930s, the golden age of Hollywood, it was really charming that your film started with gowns and costumes by Trish Somerville. You know, very similar to gowns by Adrian or any of those other really, you know, iconic designers that we look to today. Were there any specific movies or designers' work that you look to for this project?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely a big fan of Edith Head. We did one of the little Easter eggs that I chose to put in was there was this really lovely young background woman who I felt looked a bit like a young Edith Head. So we kept dressing her and popping her in different scenes as in the background. And a big fan of Adrian. Just the dresses and suits that he made were just really, really, really beautiful. So definitely, you know, looked at a lot of films that they both did, looked at a lot of films that Marion did. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Adrian dressed the real Marion, just like you are dressing the real Amanda Seyfried.
It was lovely. Just
so in 80 years, a costume designer is looking back at your work because Marion is going to be on the screen yet again.
Let's hope so.
Right, exactly. Now, speaking of Marion and Amanda Seyfried, who features, of course, heavily in the film, and you have her kind of in the center and the lightest, kind of a light bulb in this darker black and white world. How did you research the real Marion? And is there anything in particular that you learned about her personality, her likes or dislikes that you wanted to portray in the film?
Well, there are books about her. So I was reading some of her, you know, kind of autobiography books that she has. And that was one of the things I found interesting about the circus party was that she loved that party so much that they had at the Hearst Mansion that she, within a month's time, organized and had another circus party at her house in Santa Monica. So I thought that was really interesting that she, you know, that she really loved having these parties, and she was very, very social. The other thing I found interesting was she had an extensive jewelry collection, but she barely wore jewelry at all. So that was one of the keys that we kept, and we kept her jewelry very minimal. She just mainly wore rings and small necklaces, even though she had quite a bit of jewelry in her collection.
Very interesting. Have you gotten to go to Hearst Castle and visit?
I haven't. I'm going to say, like, at once we're all done with all this and we can travel and go visit places, I do want to go and visit.
Yeah, it's really incredible. It's a great place to visit. And boy, it's a long way up the coast. I mean, it was definitely a Shangri-La of its own. You know, unlike the compacted world of the Hollywood studios that was constantly had, you know, one film after another in production. So I can't wait to hear what you think of the real Hearst Castle. And we're lucky that it's still, you know, with us today. So some additional, you know, career highlights with you, like on Hunger Games, Catching Fire, in addition to designing the costumes, you were also able to utilize costumes from couture houses like Alexander McQueen. You know, building those relationships prior to working on film, did that ever help you with Mank, or was that really kind of two different separate worlds?
I mean, particularly for that, it was just two different worlds. I mean, I used to do a lot of celebrity dressing and editorial, and so I did develop relationships with showrooms and design houses, and was very grateful to, you know, to some of the loans we have and some of the people that were willing to build pieces with me, you know. So like Tex Savario we worked very closely on building Katniss's wedding dress. And he was just someone that I found I had not worked with before, and kind of found just images of pieces he built. And I thought he was the perfect fit to create this enormous, you know, really magical dress for her. And, you know, with other designers that we were really lucky to have participate with us was like Jun Jae and Alexander McQueen. And I mean, there were so many, and I felt really fortunate about it because our time frame for being this film and being the second one, oddly, we had a really short prep time. So realistically, we would have never been able to build every costume that we needed. Like as an example, when you're looking at a character like Katniss, her character, I think she had probably 65 changes in the film.
Wow.
So that's really, really extensive. And you're talking about that's one character compared to then all the other characters you have and all the tributes and them all needing various costumes for all the events that they do. So, it was great to be able to have some design houses want to come in and participate in this, which was really nice. And then also us being able to build so many things. Like if you're looking at the blue Mockingjay dress that's on the screen, the amount of time that it takes to build something like this is pretty extensive because you're printing on this fabric. So you have to have, I worked with an illustrator, Phil Boutte, who's amazing. And we're really great friends. And it was coming up with laying out how to do patterns on pieces besides even doing the illustrations and just using different, there's so many people in the costume department that all participate in making all of this happen. So, looking at if you look at the piece in the back that Joanna wore, my inspiration for that was pieces of bark from a tree. And so that's also a different type of printing where that's a 3-dimensional printing on fabric. So it's all raised and that's all printed on a mesh bodysuit. So it has stretch and play with it so she can get into it, but it's all raised in 3-dimensional printing. And then the dress that's in the middle, that's black, that's all embroidered. So, it's so many different people and design houses that you work with and crafts people and embroiderers and printers to kind of help you bring your ideas to life, so it takes a gigantic village to make it all happen.
Do you always work with the same team? Do you have kind of a set team for yourself, or does it vary according to production?
It varies. It varies, probably mostly it varies towards location as where you're going to be and availability and who's available. I mean, I definitely have people I really love and I enjoy working with. And so far in my life of working in film, I never really end up in the same place more than one time. It was really amazing to be able to work on Mank in LA, in Hollywood, when it's a Hollywood story. That's really, really rare. And I got to work at home. So then I did get to have some of the people I normally get to work with that. But then you look at for C, I got to take one person with me from my regular crew, and we were in Vancouver, and I had an amazing team of people there. And like that team on a regular basis, on regular days, my team's about 50 people. And then that doesn't even include the people that are back in LA building armor and shipping that out to us. And then as your days of background get bigger, you have more people on set. And then this last film, I heard we're going to Canada for it. So I'm thinking, oh, great, I know people in Vancouver, so I'm going there. No, now we're going to Toronto. Well, I've never worked in Toronto before. So now it's a whole new group of people. So, with what I joke about, that we're kind of like gypsies and carnies and we just move from town to town and you make these new families. And, and part of that's really exciting. And what's really great about this job is you're always experiencing new people and new interesting ideas and new challenges as well. I mean, you think like right now with COVID, some of the biggest challenges we had were just getting fabrics to build clothes, getting buttons and zippers to build clothes. So, I do like all that part of it is that challenges, but yeah, you like to keep crew that you have. I love working with new people as well. And I like to integrate both in that, but a lot of it depends on where you're going to.
So speaking of materials, for Mank, where did you, and since you were here in LA, where did you source the materials to get that 30s aesthetic? Because, 30s gowns are very flowy and a lot of that suiting material for the men, it's very different from kind of suit material today. Where did that come from?
Definitely we sourced pretty much everywhere. I think that's kind of what's been my general consistency on every show is you throw out your net really wide and pull things in, because it's also, we get stuff a lot from New York. There's amazing sources in LA. Like I'm a big ISW fan, they're a fabric source that's been here for many, many years that I truly
love. For those who don't know, it's International Silks and Woolens.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's International Silks and Woolens. who, everybody in the industry uses them. They're really a great source for us. Also, Western Costume has vintage fabrics, in a storeroom in their fabric store that are great, and trims, so you look out, and it just really depends on how much do you need, how many multiples do you have to make, if you're looking at the gold lame dress that's in the illustration here, but next to Hearst and Mank, that was a fabric that we found that was kind of an antique. It was an antique gold lame that had a slight crinkle through it. And there was only enough yardage to make one dress, really. And we had a bit extra. And we thought we'd be fine with that because of the scenes. And, and then I'm thinking okay, she goes, I want it to be, catch light nicely, but not shine too much when she's in this interior scene. But then she moves outside and then she's in the moonlight. And we shot that moonlight scene. It's called Day for Night. What it means is we actually shot it under really, it's shot during the day, but we make it look like it's nighttime, and you actually oddly use very bright lights for the moonlight. So the actors had to wear dark contacts so that they wouldn't squint and they could have their eyes open and be normal and have normal expression. But so this fabric, I'm fine with, all the scenes and how it's going to go. And I'm laying that all out in my head. And then as I'm talking to Dave and he's telling Fincher, and he's telling me, oh, and then there's a part we want her to take her shoes off, and then she bends down and she gets this bottle of gin out. And I'm thinking, is she kneeling on her knees in the dress? Yeah, exactly. And then it's and then she walks and then she hops up on this fountain. And I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to hop up on a fountain. So then we had a little train on the back of the dress. So it was putting a loop in it so she could put it around her wrist to help her maneuver. Because, she has to look like a starlet. She has to be stunning. But when you're making a film, the actor has to be able to move and have function in the garment as well. So luckily, Gary's such a gentleman that he helps her get up on the fountain. But I have to say, after day 2 of shooting, the back of the dress was shredded. So my amazing cutter fitter, Marilyn Madsen, who, built all the garments, especially the women's garments, she had to stay late at night and replace the whole back of the dress. So, so there's those moments when you're just, you're kind of biting your nails and hoping it's going to go fine. And you feel problem solving. I mean, so much of our job, all of our jobs on set and as a designer, and my assistant, Corey, who was brilliant, is constant problem solving of how you make things work and keep it as calm as you can and keep the actors as comfortable without alerting anyone there's a problem.
Right. Must be fun. It's not just what you see on the outside. Were these actors also wearing kind of period shaping garments or anything that was specific for their body type? And also because the movie does take place over more than a decade, so as bodies would have changed, how do you deal with that?
Definitely. I mean, for Gary's character, Gary in his real life is a very fit, very lean, svelte gentleman, and Mank had a belly. So Gary put on 12 to 15 pounds for the part, which was amazing. So for us, with that showing age, his progression in age, it was where we adjusted the waistline of his pants to go lower under the belly to make his belly appear bigger, as he got older, doing his shirt collars very tight to kind of pull up his neck fat out so that he could look heavier. And then making his clothes be more worn in. He definitely wore period undergarments, period shoes, period socks. Some scenes we even had sock garters, which we were really lucky to find a lot of period sock garters. And then, you talk about someone like L.B. Mayer and Hearst, who were also, Charles Dance and Arliss are also very lean and fit. And so we had to make them padded suits. So we had to pad out their chest and their bellies to make them look a bit bigger and heavier. And yes, giving them period underwear, period undershirts underneath. So you kind of want to do, and with the women too, it's about the silhouette and the shape. Like, what's the shape of the bra, of that time period? You definitely want to use that so you get that silhouette and that softness right.
Well, we're almost to a time where I want to have a Q&A with some of our viewers. But so I just want to wrap up really quickly because thank you for all of this information. It's fascinating. And I just love that you have pulled all of your work experiences together for, you know, it comes down to this latest project, and now with Slumberland, you know, the next challenge. And you know, you've done so many iconic films now. You've done iconic videos, Christina Aguilera, Dirty, Lady Marmalade, 2001. We're now in the 20th anniversary year. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it.
What was it like? So, you know, I'm not calling you a relic or a museum piece, but what's it like now, somebody who has decades of experience, and, you know, when you look back on Lady Marmalade?
Well, I mean, you know, it's hard for me to believe that's 20 years ago, and I'm still really dear friends with a lot of the people that helped me on that, worked on that, and it's interesting to see it come around, because it didn't even register to me until I started seeing it kind of in social media,
Right.
you know, of how long ago this was, and I just think, you know, at that time it was, you know, to give people an example of, like, you know, old school music videos. We worked, I think we shot that 3 days or 4 days, and we shot 22-hour days, 23-hour days. And so, you know, you're talking about, that's what you're shooting, but as costume people and hair and makeup people, you're there hours before you shoot, getting everything ready. So you're talking, you know, like 27-hour days. So I'm so grateful for those experiences, because, you know, I came from that world of where I did everything because you had to. So my whole team did everything. We sewed, we did the rhinestoning, we did the fittings. So when I transitioned into a film world, it was amazing to me to see this plethora of all these people that did all these things, you know, and you know, and I definitely had a lot of help then, but you just kind of shifted into every position, you know, that you just did whatever needed to be done. And I really like having that experience. And I think it's helped me so much as to where I'm at in filmmaking, you know, or like something for like, you know, like the TV show C, where, you know, I can drape everything, you know, and I have that skill set, and I'm going to go back to FIDM because that's where I learned like to sew and to do draping. And I still really enjoy draping on projects. So, you know, I think it's having that vast skill set that you just, you know, that you feel that, you know, you're up for all these challenges, and it gives you some, you know, that you're prepared, that you don't freak out because, you know, okay, I've got this skill set, I can do this.
What year did you graduate?
Ooh, I want to say 89, maybe.
Oh, okay, because I was 92.
I think 89.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say somewhere there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, FIDM, I love FIDM, of course. I mean, I had just the best schooling here as well. And, you know, in the museum, I mean, I'm not doing what you're doing, but it helps me to look at a historic garment or a costume that comes in, such as your costumes that come in that we have to mount for exhibitions, to totally understand what's going on three-dimensionally. I mean, with the pattern and draping skills that we learned here. Likewise, it's amazing what you can take through education, and somehow it's always going to be applied into your real world. So do you have any advice for our current students or students that are thinking of going into an industry that requires everything that you've talked about tonight?
I'm a big advocate on education, regardless of what type of education it is. I think if it's, I'm big on books. I have so many books. I love a library. I think, you know, I don't think you have to go to college. I think you have to do what fits in your lifestyle and what fits for you and your family. But I just think it's continual learning. If it's looking at, you know, books of photography, even if it's you're on Instagram, look at world things, look at like, you know, culture around the world. I mean, those are some of the things that inspire me so much, is how people live around the world. Learn periods, definitely learn every period of costume dress, real dress, and again, around the world, because each continent and each country completely had evolved differently, and, you know, into what was function and what was fashion and as to why. So I think it's just constantly educating yourself, you know, travel. I think travel is a big thing, you know, that you learn fabrics is enormous. I'm still obsessed with fabrics. I find so much joy, which sounds so funny. And like, even I was just in Toronto and there's a trim and fabric store that had these really beautiful, delicate trims, and it just inspires you to create new items, and new garments. So I do think it is just be curious and learn as much as you can, and then support each other. Like try and like vibe off each other and support each other. Don't be afraid to show people, what you're working on and get positive advice from it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I like very much about the creative industries is being able to share. We're always excited to get people interested in the things that we're passionate about. And, if we're passionate about something, somebody else will get passionate about it too and learn, and let me add to your list, going to museums and looking at historic dress.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I do think that's the thing, like with FIDM, like I get thrilled every time you have an exhibit because I get to go in and see, because as I'm watching a film, I want to know, oh, how was that made? And I wonder if that sleeve is set in and what's that fabrication like? So museums are definitely, even garment museums, fashion museums, even paintings, everything is inspirational in that way.
Exactly. So do you have a lot of interns that work with you, or do you mentor a lot of young people?
I think at times we're trying to figure that out in our industry because there is a lot of studios that don't allow for internships. We have PAs that we can have, but I'm open to trying to educate people as much as I can. But yeah, we're really working on trying. That's why I'm really happy to do these panels. I've done a few FIDM things because I do feel it's extremely important, and to let people know that these types of jobs are out there. And like within our industry, I mean, one of the panels I did with you guys, I think it was a year or two ago, I was really excited to meet some of the students that were really into wanting to do aging and dyeing and breakdown, because that is such an art form. And it's really, it's like, that's one of my favorite departments to be in at work, is the workroom and then aging and dyeing. So yeah, I think I think these panels are great to let people know that there's so many things in film that you can do and gravitate towards. But yeah, doing the internship program, it does get tricky on film sets because it's not a position that really exists.
That's a very interesting, I did not know that.
We're pushing for it. It's just tricky. Yeah.
And how interesting to have a dialogue with your other design colleagues and like the Costume Designers Guild, and try to figure out ways of getting young people the experience that they're going to need, that so often you maybe fall into and get lucky. So, well, you know what? Why don't we open it up to some of the questions from our audience members? So this is Jade Alexandria. Would you say that it is necessary to have a costume design past, or do you know many costume designers, costume design interns with a fashion background? So I guess fashion versus costume.
Well, I think I had a fashion background, so I think that that applies. I mean, I definitely started off doing more fashion and, with music, was doing custom clothing for people. So I considered at the time, because I didn't really know, in my head, I never thought about being a costume designer, that I was doing personal clothing and studied fashion design. So yeah, I think you can come from fashion design.
This is from Josephine Parks. First, she says, I love your Westworld work, exclamation mark. What is the most important or least important aspect that can be overlooked to stay on budget? What an interesting question.
I'm sorry, repeat it. What's the most?
Sure. What's the most important or least important aspect of work that can be overlooked to stay on budget?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to having a strong team. I mean, I think that we definitely always want to stay on budget. That's very, very important. It's very important to me. You never, with film or series, you never want to come too far under budget, and you never want to go really far over budget. You want to just kind of stay right where you need to be. I think it's being very, aware. For me, it's being aware as a designer, and I have constant dialogue with my supervisor and my team as to where we're at budget wise. And you do cost reports, constantly, but it's also not going excessive, knowing what it is that you definitely need, and keeping track of that and staying in it, especially when you're building clothes, because, you have to take into account, like, you need the fabrics, you need the trim, you need the buttons, you need the zippers. How many hours is it taking to make things? Are you farming things out? So I think it's the thing of just having a really good dialogue with your supervisor that you work with closely, and having, not stifling your creativity, but being realistic on the amount of doubles that you think you'll need. What's the yardage of fabric you think you need? You just have to be conscious.
From Root Gomes, this is interesting. Hi, Trish. I work in audio for films and would love to know if and how you communicate with the audio department. For example, on productions, the audio, how do you make use of the fit mics packs to the actors? And for post-production, do you sometimes communicate with the Foley team, I don't know what that is, on the materials used for costumes?
So I'll explain it. So a Foley artist is somebody who makes sounds once a film is done and they land sound. So say like you had a horse carriage go by and you didn't capture the sound perfectly. It's up to Foley artists to figure out how to mimic that sound accurately, record it, and then it lays into a film. And it's the same thing could be for popping a wine bottle or champagne bottle. So that's what a Foley artist does. So I don't work with Foley artists ever. That's so kind of post of where I am. But I do work very closely with the sound people. And so kind of the closest departments I work with, it starts off with production designer, and first director, production designer, and DP, and then hair and makeup and props. And then from there, once we're shooting, I work with the sound people because they have to mic the actors. And there's, you always want to have this great relationship with them because they want to have precise, accurate sound. And you want that as well, but you don't want to see the microphone. You don't want to see the mic pack. So I think it's having this really good relationship of explaining, like, on the show I just did, I would go to the sound gentleman, Glenn, and show him, here's what the actor's wearing today. I would show him a fitting photo. Here's what the actor's wearing. I suggest we do an ankle strap. We put the mic pack there. He doesn't have a tie on, so you put the mic inside the shirt. So you just kind of work together and figure out where the mic can go and where the mic pack can go.
So this is from Colleen O'Connell. Your work over your career is amazing! Exclamation mark. What is the best way for someone to get their foot in the door as a designer? You began as a stylist. Do you recommend this as a starting point to becoming a designer?
I think a good way is, for me, it was doing music videos and commercials. So I think those, for me, that's the avenue that worked. I think it is something good, starting off with something that's on a smaller scale. I'm talking about body-wise. I think it's hard to start straight away dressing. You're looking at something like Catching Fire where we had, 6,500 people to dress at some point. So, I think it's starting off because you're thinking of, there's 500 people per background scene and changes.
Amazing.
So you want to start off probably doing like music videos, or, if you have friends now, there's so many great camera, programs that you can even make your own movies, or just if you want to design things and put things together and shoot it yourself. But I would suggest probably trying to get in and doing like music videos, small indie films, and commercials. You can also work at rental houses. You can apply to work at rental houses, and it helps you learn periods and years, and and then knowing your way around a rental house.
Is that also a good way for getting into the union? Because I know that's often a really important aspect of being able to work.
Definitely. I don't know exactly what the criteria is and how long you have to commit to being at rental houses, but yes, but probably 90% of the rental houses in Los Angeles are all union.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is from Amanda Schwartzbaum for Trish. Is there a particular method in which professionals such as yourself like to be contacted by those trying to get their foot in the door? Wink, wink. Are there any suggestions in that arena that you can provide us graduates? You are fabulous, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been contacted various ways, like, through my agent, I've been contacted that way. I think through the Costume Design Guild, I've had people submit things through that have gotten to me. I think other ways that you can go about it. Right now, it's a bit tricky because of the time that we're in with COVID. But prior to that, I think that, that like you can visit rental houses and put together your CV or your resume and explain what you do and that you're willing to PA and you want to get your foot in the door. You know, I mean, I think that's also really a good way. It's an old fashioned way, but I think it's a good way to see someone's face and get their energy and figure out what, you know, what they want to do.
Take every opportunity, no matter what it is. You never know where it's going to lead, right?
Yes.
Right. So this is from Jordy Palmos. Do you collect period garments as part of your research? And do you take them apart? Which just, now that tears my heart apart.
Okay, so you don't listen, Kevin. So,
No.
yes, I mean, I don't collect period garments because, you know, you can start collecting and then it becomes, yeah.
Believe me, I know.
It can get out of control, yeah. So I have to say, depending on the projects that I'm working on, or if I do find something that I think is really special, I'll hold it in hopes that I can use it somewhere later. But yes, with certain garments, we will, like, you know, take it apart to a degree where we can put it back together so we can see what the construction is like,
Right.
you know, maybe the boning and the seaming inside. Like for Mank, there was all these dresses and coats I kept finding of old pieces that had really interesting sleeves and really interesting seaming in the sleeves. And I really wanted to use that on Marion's coat. And so I would bring pieces to Marilyn, who was my cutter fitter. And then also I ordered in all these reproductions of old pattern books so we can see how the sleeves were constructed. And she didn't take the garments apart, but we would turn everything inside out and kind of like see where all the seaming was. And, you know, so yeah, I think that's very beneficial and very helpful. You don't necessarily need to take the garment apart, but it is good to figure out the construction by actually seeing it.
Just to expand on that a little bit, do you ever find period trimmings or antique fabrics or something or other, you just think, you know, this is so beautiful. It's so rare to find, let's say, you know, 5 yards of the matte gold lame, or you know, that personally that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna acquire this because I know maybe down the road this might come in handy. Do you ever do that yourself?
I do. I mean, I had, as an example for Westworld, for Dolores's dress, I had bought these buttons at the Rose Bowl, probably, I'm going to say easy 20 years ago. And it was amongst other things I bought, but there were these beautiful, very delicate blue and white enamel buttons. And I held onto them forever. And that's what I ended up using on Dolores's blue dress from Westworld. And it was something like that. So what we'll do is then you need multiples, right? So then we're making multiples of dress. So if I don't have enough, then what you do is you take it to someone to cast them and reproduce them and then make the multiples that you need. But yeah, I've definitely done that with trims. I've done it with fabrics. I just bought some fabric from Western Costume that I don't know what I can use it for, but it's this amazing, you know, old red, white, and blue wool that's a stripe, and it's just great. So I was like, I have to get that. You know, I'm going to use it for something.
That's when you're working on like the French Revolution or something.
No, it's more like a really fun fabric. I actually thought I would use it in Slumberland, and then it just didn't work out because we have a lot of water that happens. And so wool and water don't go well together.
Right. So this is from Jimena Echeves. I hope I said that correctly. What is the most difficult design you've ever created?
Most difficult. Well, probably, which looks fairly simple, would probably be the costumes, the tribute costumes in Catching Fire, because we had to make them fit so many body shapes and so many sizes. And then we had to do 3-dimensional printing on them. And then we also had, they're actually not even shown here. It's all the ones that they wear actually in the games. And then they're in and out of the water. So it couldn't be wetsuit. It couldn't be wetsuit material because that's actually too hot when you're out of the water. So that was probably one of the most challenging to have it be very functional, then to also really look good, and then withstand all the, you know, hiding stunt pads underneath, and then having them be so active, and then also with the shoes that they could run and do all these stunts and activities in, but then also were in the water, so they had to drain water out of them. So that was probably one of the most challenging.
Wow. Yeah, to think of those real life aspects once the camera stops rolling, that the actors, you know, still have to kind of walk around or use the little boy or little girls or whatever,
Yes.
you know, room. So this is from Annalisa Ferrara. What a great name. For Trish, in Mank, how was your first presentation of the project to show your view to the director? Did you use a mood board? Did you sketch some ideas?
So initially, the first round of what I'll kind of show to a director, especially Fincher, so I do boards per character. So you get the script, and I get the script initially. And generally the first person I hire in my department is a union regulation, is you have to hire a key or a supervisor. And that's the person that breaks the script down, does all the budgets. Their job is vast. They are a very necessary job in our industry. It's a very creative job, and it's a very intelligent job. So we rely heavily on the supervisors, and they help you build your team. So I get a breakdown first, and I start breaking the script down, and I break it down per character. And then I look at what scenes are in there that are particular, like say for the mayor birthday party, I know that's going to be evening dress wear. And then I look at like the circus party, and I have to figure out what that's going to be. So I do boards per character, and then I do boards for the big scenes. And then with this film in particular, because we had so many men in the writers' rooms and on the studio lot together, my assistant Corey Dice and I made these boards, and we did, you know, all the men that would be in a room together at the same time, and then all their fabric swatches of their suits, their shirting, and then the ties, because we wanted the suiting to look different. And when you're shooting in black and white, men's suiting can just look very much the same. So we made boards for that. So what I showed to David first is he's very interested in fabrics as well. So I'll put together boards per character and then boards per scenes. And then he comes in and we kind of go over each thing and discuss it. And then I'll go to illustrations and talk about what I see and why and where. And then we talk color, lack of color, light to dark, particularly for Mank.
Are you as organized in your personal life?
I am not.
I mean, that's an extraordinary amount of work. Now, was that before you got the job, or was all of that work after you were hired?
That's after I'm hired. I mean, it goes a couple different ways. Like, I'm very, very lucky and very grateful that I have a relationship where Dave called me and said, we're doing Mank. You know, I'm doing a film. Do you want to do it? And it's always yes. I don't even ask what it is. I just say, yes, thank you for asking.
Right.
I'm really happy to be aboard. So, you know, but if it was something, say like for Catching Fire, though I had worked with Francis Lawrence in the past, it was for music videos and I hadn't seen him in many years. And he called, or the producers called me about Catching Fire to work with him. So I started reading the books because the movie wasn't out yet. The first film wasn't out yet. So I started reading the books. And in my mind, it was a totally different concept than what the movie was. And so I started doing boards, and I met with Francis and was showing him kind of these tears I'd put together. And he kind of laughed and said, oh, no, this is too dark. You're going in a really dark direction. It's not this. And I'm like, but wait, kids are killing kids. And he's like, yeah, but the first film will be out in about a week. See the first film and then rethink this. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was right. I was like, oh, this is not what I had imagined in my head at all. So, you know, with something like that, I had an initial meeting with him and then put boards together and then went back and met with him and then met with the producers to show him what I was thinking and where I was going.
Nice. Okay, I can't believe the hour is almost up. It goes by in a flash. So I have one last question. This is from Low B. And I think it's so pertinent for right now. What are some of the challenges you have had to institute because of COVID in terms of your process? And how do you foresee the costuming world shifting because of the pandemic going forward? Great way to wrap this up, the future.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is very, very challenging. As I mentioned, I mean, one of the ways we looked at was we started, because I started, so you have depending on a film, you have a bit of prep time, you know, so I try and ask for about 12 weeks if it's just a contemporary film. If it's a fantasy, you know, if it's something very large, I ask for much more. So we lucked out and started doing fittings quite early. Even though we were in COVID, I was still in LA and everything wasn't shut down. And we started ordering in fabrics. And then when I got to Toronto, it became more challenging because the city was much more shut down. They don't have as much fabric sourcing as we have here. And then you're talking about getting things shipped in internationally. So one of the big challenges we did have was definitely sourcing fabrics and the delay at which time things are shipped. Even looking for shoes, a simple thing, of socks, it's like we would order something and you may not get it for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, which in film, that's really difficult for us. We need to have it, make sure it fits, and have multiples of things. So definitely that all became very challenging. I started realizing this, I just started ordering fabrics in excess of what I thought I would need to try and plot down later on down the line all the characters we'd have to build things for. And then set is much different now. We're wearing face masks, we're wearing shields. The shields are very difficult to see through. You get a lot of glare, so that makes it hard. So, I mean, I'm hoping we can go back to what was filmmaking with some improvements. I think it's very hard to continue to exist this way that we're making films,
Right.
because the hardest part is with filmmaking, you're part of a community, you're part of a group of people that have the same common goal for this artistic outcome. And with COVID, you're not allowed to move about freely. And I can't go to see the production designer and look at all the sets with him as they're being built. And I can't go into the hair and makeup department every day and talk about, I have to send images and notes and we stand 6 feet apart. So I wanted to go back to a way that we can integrate with each other the way it was.
Oh, we all hope that, absolutely, and all of our endeavors. And I just want to thank you, Trish, a huge thank you for being with us this evening, and for sharing so much fascinating insight about your work on Mank, but also your career, for being such an inspiration for the next generation of costume designers. We hope to welcome you and your costumes, at the FIDM Museum soon, when we hope to be able to open our galleries again and to share everything with everybody.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the questions. Thank you so much.
You are an inspiration, and we love you a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.